The UFC is headed to Kansas City with a very, very solid fight night card with a great main event between Garry and Carlos Prates, a few ranked fighters on the main card, and then just some really, really fun matchups all throughout. So I'm going to be going through and giving my full card predictions, breaking down every matchup, giving you my winner pick, main card, and the prelims, and how I think they get it done. Would love to hear your thoughts down below. If you agree, disagree with my picks, let me hear it. If you enjoy the video, all I ask is that you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Timestamps are going to be in the description if you guys want to jump around two specific matchups. But let's just get right into it here. Wish I could say we're starting off with a bang. We're probably not. Chelsea Chandler taking on Joselyne Edwards. Women's fight at bantamweight. This is a pretty tough matchup, if I'm being honest with you guys. I think the biggest upset of this entire card would be if both of these women made weight for this fight. Chandler has missed weight in back-to-back fights. Joselyne Edwards has missed weight in 3 of her last 5. I think in this matchup, Chandler is going to want to wrestle. She's very limited on the feet, needs to rack up that control time. Edwards isn't a great grappler, but I think she's competent. Don't think Chelsea is like a world beater. And I do think Joselyne Edwards can do more damage on the feet, so I'm going to lean towards Joselyne Edwards by decision. In the next matchup, we have Timmy Cuamba taking on Roberto Romero at featherweight. Now, this is not a fight between two like extremely high-level guys. Don't think either of these two are like elite prospects, but I really think this does have like fight of the night potential very early on this card. Romero had a really fun UFC debut, was brought in on short notice to take on David Onama, who's also on this card, but like that's a pretty tough test. Short notice, David Onama, like fringe top 15 dude. He hurt Onama badly in the first round. And so, like, he put up a decent fight, kind of faded in the second and third rounds, kind of to be expected, taking the fight on short notice. I do think it can be kind of misleading to be, like, hyping people up with a good performance in a loss. We've seen this. I mean, Michael Chandler is kind of like the king of this, right? Where, like, he's going up against Paddy Pimblett, and I'm kind of making the case, like, oh, he's looked so good in these fights. Sometimes, like, if you're just not winning, it doesn't translate well. Felipe Dos Santos stepping in on short notice against Manel Kape, I think is a great example. Like, everyone was so high on him. He, like, hung in there, clearly lost, but, like, looked decent. Since then, it has not gone well for him. So I'm not saying Romero is going to come in here and be like an absolute monster, but he's a power striker. He's a little bit reckless on the feet, but that can play to his advantage. He's durable, and the dude's just a dog. He's going to go out there, and he's going to get into a scrap. On the other side with Cuamba, he's also a striker. He's kind of been beaten pretty clearly in his first 2 UFC fights on the feet. I do think, he went up against Oki and Almeida. Both are cleaner strikers than I think Romero is probably going to be in this matchup. Cuamba, also someone who's very durable. Almeida dropped him a few times, stunned him, on multiple different occasions, and he was still in there, ended up winning the 3rd round in that matchup. I'm expecting a very competitive fight between these two. I think it could turn into a war. Neither guy is super defensively responsible. I think they both are going to be able to have some success on the feet. I'm going to lean towards Romero here with a close decision. Then we're going to be looking at Jaqueline Amorim taking on Polyana Viana, a women's fight down at strawweight. These two seem to be going in 2 different directions. Amorim has won 3 straight UFC fights, all by finish. Viana has been finished in back-to-back fights and has not picked up a win in the UFC since 2022. Now, I will say, Viana has faced some tough competition. Her last 3 losses are to Jillian Robertson, a top 15 fighter, Yasmin Lucindo, a top 15 fighter, and then Tabitha Ricci, a top 15 fighter. Viana's a finisher. She has an 100% finish rate, 5 knockouts, 8 submissions. Don't really see that with a lot of these women fighters, especially the ones that have been in the UFC, for a decent amount of time. She does have pretty solid submission offense, but she's also been pretty consistently out-grappled in her recent fights. She's not great at actually getting the fight to the ground. She only has a 33% takedown accuracy, and then she's also not good at defending takedowns, where she's down at 38% in terms of her takedown defense. On the other side with Amorim, she actually also has an 100% finish rate, 7 submissions, 2 knockouts. I think both are going to want to grapple in this matchup. I just think Amorim is the straight-up better grappler, so I'm going to pick her by round 2 submission. Now, this next fight here is probably one of my most anticipated ones on the card. Cameron Saaiman taking on Malcolm Wellmaker. This is a bantamweight fight. I kind of love and hate this matchup. I love it because I think it's going to be an absolute banger. I think it's, a great fight, a super competitive matchup. But I also just really like these two, so I don't really want to see, one of them take the loss here. I don't want to see Wellmaker lose his debut, and then I don't want to see Cameron Saaiman lose his 3rd straight fight, which, is the stakes in this matchup. Saaiman's coming off a very tough loss to Peyton Talbot. It was booked as like, prospect versus prospect, who was going to pick up the win. He was like thoroughly dominated in that matchup. And I think the thing that stuck out to me the most, like he was outstruck, he was knocked out, whatever. It just seemed like he was at a real physicality disadvantage in that matchup. Now he's still very young, 24 years old. He's a high volume striker. He throws to all three levels, great kicks. He switches stances consistently, can close distance very quickly. He's just like a great athlete, and also, very strong cardio, can fight a high pace for 3 rounds like we've seen in the UFC. And he also can grapple. Like he's capable in that department. He pushes a high pace there where if he gets taken down, he's going to be consistently scrambling, and then he can control grapple if he wants to. On the other side here with Wellmaker, he's a pretty fun prospect. He is 30 years old, so maybe on the older end for like prospect, especially in the lighter weight classes. He does not look 30. He just has such insane composure in the cage. Like he looks so calm, like nothing phases him. He's pretty big for the weight class, 5'10", 71.5-inch reach, has a nasty jab that we saw in the Contender Series, very good low kicks. He hits hard, had a nasty right hook knockout on the Contender Series, caught someone, blitzing in, knocked him out cold, pretty much like face planted him. I don't love his defense. I think there's some vulnerability there. He kind of retreats out of range with his hands down, and I do think he could be vulnerable in this matchup against Cameron Saaiman, who can extend his combinations, but also is very good at hiding his kicks behind his punches. So if you see, Wellmaker thinking he's safe out of the range of the punch, I think you could see Cameron Saaiman surprise him and potentially clip him with a big head kick. This is a tough matchup to choose between. The way I kind of see it is I think Wellmaker is going to have a lot of success with his jab. I think he's the more powerful guy, but I feel like Cameron Saaiman's going to have the openings to land some of those fight-ending shots. So I've been going back and forth. I'm going to side with Wellmaker here. I'm going to go round 2 knockout. He's the guy that's trending up. Cameron Saaiman coming off of back-to-back losses. I think he's going to be the physically, more powerful guy, but I am worried that Cameron Saaiman's going to catch him with something big. So I'm just excited for this matchup, but I will go Wellmaker round 2 KO. Then we're going to stick around in bantamweight where we have Damone Blackshear taking on Alatengheili. Blackshear's pretty fun. He's been extremely active. He fought 4 times in 2023. He fought twice in 2024. This will be his second fight already in 2025. He's a very solid grappler. 11 of his 16 wins are by submission. His last 4 UFC wins have all been subs. He had a Kimura, a rear naked choke, a twister, and then a ground and pound knockout. He's a very opportunistic grappler where he can kind of struggle to go out and initiate his own wrestling. But if you trip, if you take him down, like he is going to take advantage of it and, get his jiu-jitsu going. On the other side here with Alatengheili, he's been pretty inactive and has kind of fought some lower level UFC competition. He's only fought 6 times since 2020. He's won 3 of his last 4, but those wins are against Clayton Rodriguez, Chad and Hellinger, and Kevin Kroom. So not the cream of the crop when we're talking about the talent in the bantamweight division. He does mix things up. Is fine on the feet, averages 2 takedowns per 15 minutes. I just view Blackshear as the much better grappler, and Alatengheili's striking doesn't stand out to me as like a huge edge in this matchup. He's been outlanded in 6 of his 8 UFC fights. He absorbs over 2 significant strikes per minute more than he's landing, which is not great, especially like in fights where he's winning. Like he is still getting outlanded, which is not ideal. So I'm going to pick Damone Blackshear here by decision. I could see him finding a submission, but decision is going to be the pick. Moving up 1 weight class, we have Chris Gutierrez taking on John Castaneda. These guys are actually typically bantamweights, but they've had some weird cancellations where I think they're both supposed to fight different opponents, and then both their opponents either like pulled out or got different fights, and so then they were booked on short notice. I think it was UFC 313. Then one of them had to pull out, I think like making weight. So now they're rebooked here, fighting up at 145. We've seen Chris Gutierrez really kind of struggle once he's gotten to top competition. His only losses in the last 6 years have been against Song Yadong and Pedro Munoz. He's someone who wants to stay on the outside, use his footwork to circle around the cage, land his jabs, land his kicks. He does fight like in a very safe way where he's not going to, really go for broke. He's not going to put himself at risk, but it can be frustrating, if he's not really going for broke, if he is losing. His wrestling defense has been a concern in his last couple of fights. He was taken down twice, 4 minutes of control against Kwang Lee, and then he was taken down twice, controlled for 11 minutes against Song Yadong. Castaneda is coming off a decision loss to Daniel Marcos. Really no shame in that loss. Like, Daniel Marcos has looked very impressive, but he won his previous 2 fights. He's very well-rounded, 21 fights as a pro. He has 7 knockouts, 7 submissions, 7 decision wins. He has landed knockdowns in 3 of his last 4 wins, and then he has landed at least 3 takedowns in back-to-back wins. So I expect this one to be very competitive. I think it'll be interesting to see how much success Castaneda can have, really kind of pushing the pace against Gutierrez, making him fight a fight that he's uncomfortable with. If he's fine just, standing, picking at Gutierrez from range, that's the fight that Chris Gutierrez wants to be in. So I expect this one to be competitive. I am just going to lean towards Gutierrez by close decision. Really has only suffered losses against like those ranked level opponents. In this next matchup, we have Ahmad Hassanzada taking on Evan Elder. This is a lightweight fight. I like Evan Elder. I think he's a fun fighter. He's well-rounded, pushes a high pace. He's always going to bring the fight to his opponent, and he's coming off of back-to-back wins after losing his first 2 fights in the UFC, now kind of finding some success. I wouldn't say he's like the smoothest or the slickest striker, but, he throws big shots. He's powerful, mixes up his kicks, can throw with his back leg, can also throw, the lead leg head kicks. On the other side with Hassanzada here, he's making his UFC debut. He's going to want to come in and wrestle here, but he's not all that dominant in that area. Like, he had 2 fights in the Contender Series, won his second one, but went 4 for 21 on takedowns combined in those 2 fights, was also dropped in both of those matchups. So I expect him to try to bring the wrestling, but I think Evan Elder is going to hold up in this matchup. Think he's going to be resilient, think he's going to be able to scramble, get back up to his feet. I don't think he's going to be someone who's just going to like lay down and get controlled from his back. So I think Evan Elder goes out. I think he's going to push a pace. I think Hassanzada is probably going to fade trying to, consistently wrestle. And I think Elder gets him out of there with a round 2 knockout. Now going down to flyweight, we have Matt Schnell taking on Jimmy Flick. And I feel like this is a pretty hilarious matchup here because these are probably like the 2 most fragile flyweights in the division. Matt Schnell has been finished in 8 of his 9 pro losses. Jimmy Flick has been finished in 6 of his 8 pro losses. Both these guys are very dangerous grapplers. 9 out of 16 of Schnell's wins are by submission. 15 out of Flick's 17 wins are by sub. So both have great ground games, both very dangerous with their submission offense. I think the real edge in this matchup is Matt Schnell's striking, and he's not a bad striker. Like, he loses a lot of fights on the feet, but it's just because he has like negative durability. He can go point for point. It's just that like he'll get hit with a jab and all of a sudden the dude's like unconscious. So that's been his issue. It's not that he's actually poor on the feet. I guess maybe you could say he's a little hittable, but like you really just need to touch the chin and all of a sudden, Matt Schnell is doing the chicken dance. I just don't think Jimmy Flick like threatens him on the feet at all. He has 0 wins in his career by knockout. And so I feel like Flick needs this fight on the ground, and I don't see him dominating Matt Schnell in that area. So I think Matt Schnell is going to keep it standing, and I think Matt Schnell actually finds a finish on the feet. I'm going to go Schnell by round 2 knockout. Now going up to middleweight, we've had a lot of these like lower weight class fights. We have Ikram Aliskerov taking on Andre Muniz. This is Ikram's return after the Robert Whittaker knockout. I think this is a really nice matchup for him. I think this is pretty favorable from the UFC. Ikram is a very well-rounded fighter. He hits hard. He's solid striking. He has great grappling. His weakness so far has just been his chin, right? Like, he got knocked out cold by Khamzat Chimaev before the UFC. And then Robert Whittaker is someone who had not had a finish in a long time. He gets rocked and knocked out early in round 1. So, like, that's really been the only flaw we've seen. Muniz has elite jiu-jitsu. He's 6-2 in the UFC. 15 of his 24 wins are by submission. Like, if you're breaking Jacare Souza's arm, you are legit on the ground. But it does seem like his momentum has kind of stalled here. He hasn't fought since December of 2023. He's been booked to fight Ikram 2 times before it's actually going to take place here if the fight does go through. So I just think Ikram is so much better on the feet. Muniz does not have the power to threaten him there. We've also seen Muniz get out grappled by guys like Brendan Allen, Paul Craig, so it's not even like he's super superior in that area. I think if Ikram wanted to, he could take him down and control him and be fine. So I think Ikram gets this done fairly easily. I'll go Ikram round 1 knockout. Then moving down to welterweight, we have Randy Brown taking on Nicolas Dalby. This is really fun matchmaking. Two strikers, but guys with very different styles. Randy Brown's going to want to use his big frame, stay on the outside. The dude's 6'3" with a 78-inch reach at 170. He has a good jab, snapping front kicks, does have some power if he can hit you clean with his straight. He likes to fight a pretty fight. He was a little bit too willing to stay in the clinch against Brian Battle. If he can just, not get threatened with the wrestling, stay on the outside, jab your face off for 15 minutes, he is content to do that. On the other side with Nicolas Dalby, he's going to go out there and he is going to get in a dogfight. He's not a guy who has a ton of physical advantages. Wouldn't consider him to be like a plus athlete in this weight class. Don't think he has a ton of strength. I guess his cardio is fantastic. Like, that's his physical advantage. But he's just going to make the most of what he's got. He's going to push a relentless pace. He had won 4 straight fights, including a very impressive upset knockout win against Gabriel Bonfim. He did lose his last fight, a very, very close split decision against Renat Fakhretdinov. I thought he should have gotten his hand raised, but it was, admittedly a very competitive fight. I think in this matchup, Randy Brown is going to be the cleaner, more technical striker, but I think Dalby is going to push a pace that Randy Brown is probably uncomfortable with. Dalby has been very durable throughout his career. He's never been knocked out in 29 fights. He was submitted once, but it got overturned because of a positive steroid test from the other guy. So I'm expecting a competitive fight. I think this is going to be one of those where Randy Brown wins the first round. I think the second one's going to be close, and then I think the third round, we could see Dalby kind of pull away and win that one. So I'm going to go with Randy Brown by close decision. I think he's going to be able to fend him off enough to land enough in the first couple of rounds to get the win and also, stay out of danger. Then we're going to go back up to middleweight where we have Michel Pereira taking on Abus Magomedov. And admittedly, when I first saw this matchup, I was just thinking all right, Michel Pereira getting back on track, early knockout here against Abus. But the more I looked into it, I do think this fight is more competitive than I initially thought. So Michel Pereira, since moving up to 185 in 2023, he racked up 3 straight, super quick, super impressive wins. 66-second knockout against Andre Petrosky, a 61-second win against Michel Olashechuk, where he hurt him badly to the body, then found the, I think it was a rear naked choke, submitted him, and then he had a 54-second club and sub against Ihor Potieria. So he just ran through his first 3 opponents. Not saying it's insane competition, but Petrosky's a good wrestler. Olashechuk is a good striker. Ihor Potieria, not great at either, but 3 wins, it's impressive getting it done that fast. Then he gets the main event against Anthony Hernandez, his opportunity to get into the rankings. And Hernandez just beat the brakes off of him for nearly 25 minutes. He's pretty much toying with him and then picked up the KO win in round 5. Fluffy landed 10 takedowns, had 16 minutes of control time, outlanded him in significant strikes, 152 to 24, and then 219 to 29 in total strikes. It was an absolute beating against Michel Pereira here, but the dude's extremely dangerous. He hits really hard, especially up at 185. Sometimes you move up, you don't carry the same power. Sometimes you move up, you have more power, and that's been the case for Pereira. He had a bunch of decisions at 170. All of a sudden, he moves up, and he's just nuking dudes. Also, pretty solid offensive jiu-jitsu. I do think he has a questionable gas tank. Now, Fluffy has insane cardio, can push an insane pace. He's a great wrestler. So I'm not saying he struggled in that fight. He's bad in these areas, but there's potential wrestling holes that could be exploited here. And I don't think he was ever known for having a great gas tank down at 170. I think he had a couple fights early on where he'd be showboating, flipping around, running off the cage. And then all of a sudden he's fading in round 3 and putting himself at risk of losing fights. On the other side with Abus here, he came into the UFC very striking heavy. So he came into the UFC with a 19-second knockout against Dustin Stoltzfus. Then for, some reason from the UFC, they book him in a main event against Sean Strickland, just trying to skyrocket him out of nowhere. And he tries to strike, and then he just completely gasses out in the second round of a 5-round fight and gets finished. So not great there. Then he has a decision loss to Kyle Bohalio, and it's all right, all his momentum is gone. Since then, Strickland went on to become champion. Kaio potentially is the best 185er in the world. I do think he's going to be champ at some point. Also an interesting matchup against both DDP and against Hamzat Chimaev. So he has those 2 losses. Then he shifts to a very wrestling heavy game plan. So against Worley Alves, he racks up 12 minutes of control time. Against Bruno Ferreira, he racks up 4 minutes of control time, gets a round 3 submission. So I think in this matchup, he's going to see what Fluffy did to Michel Pereira, and he should want to wrestle early and often. But outside of that Fluffy matchup, like Pereira's takedown defense has held up well. He had only allowed 1 takedown, 1 total takedown in his previous 11 UFC fights. So I'm still going to go with Pereira here. If he's getting it done, he's probably getting it done early. I'm going round 1 knockout. And so I know I said like that's what I was thinking right when I heard it, but I do see the path to Abus having success with his wrestling and then it just snowballing with Pereira getting tired and then him just being able to, continue controlling and then taking him down once we're getting into round 2 and round 3. But I am going to lean towards an early Pereira knockout. Next up at featherweight, we have Giga Chikadze taking on David Onama. This is a fun fight. Both these guys are very dangerous strikers. Giga had a ton of momentum at one point. Seems like a lot of that's been halted. He started off 7-0 in the UFC, had 3 straight finishes before he fought Calvin Kattar, lost a very dominant decision against Calvin Kattar. Then he beat Alex Caceres in like a competitive decision, but thought he clearly won. And then he most recently lost a decision to Arnold Allen. I just think his confidence has kind of taken a hit. Like he was extremely confident, like I think talking about title shots before that Calvin Kattar main event. And then Kattar just kind of like outdogged him. It was not a good fight for Giga. He took a lot of damage. And I think since then he just hasn't looked like the same guy. Giga wants to fight a clean fight from the outside, stay at range, snipe with his kicks. He can fight from both stances, likes to go southpaw to land like the liver shot, and then also head kicks from the southpaw stance against orthodox fighters. On the other side with David Onama, the dude's a dog. He's powerful on the feet, constantly is switching his stance. He can grapple. Like he's solid at controlling if he gets you there, but he's not great at actually initiating the grappling. So like only 20% takedown accuracy, 0.73 takedowns per 15 minutes. But like if he catches a kick, Giga slips, like I think there's an opportunity for David Onama to rack up some control time. And he definitely has the grappling edge over Giga, who's pretty much like all striking at this point. So I think if you're David Onama, you have to go out there. You have to put the pressure on Giga. I do think there are some questions with David Onama's durability. Maybe that's not fair because he's never been knocked out in his career, but like he was hurt badly by Nate Landwehr. He was dropped in his last fight I talked about with Romero, making his UFC debut. So I think there's questions on like if Onama can pressure without getting clipped, without getting hurt. He does have decent recoverability, like he survived in both those fights. I also think Giga has the ability to just chew up Onama's legs from the outside, which is concerning. So I'm going to lean towards Giga here. I think he's actually a betting underdog, so going with the dog here, but I think it should be a very exciting fight regardless of who's picking up the win. And then I think we have arrived at the co-main event where we have Anthony Smith taking on Minyang Zhang at light heavyweight. This is Anthony Smith's retirement fight, and it would be nice to see a longtime UFC fighter towards the end of his career getting a fair competitive fight against another veteran, maybe like an OSP type guy. But that is not how the UFC operates. In MMA, we have to see these veterans go out and just get nuked. So that kind of seems like what we're setting up here with Minyang Zhang. Like this is pretty cruel matchmaking, I feel like, from Anthony Smith. He's been a company guy. He's taken short notice fights. He works the desk, and then you're just feeding him like this Chinese tank who's probably gonna, blast him unconscious. Minyang Zhang is on an 11-fight round 1 knockout streak. He's not just on an 11-fight win streak. He has won every single one of those fights by knockout in round 1. He is 18-6 as a pro at only 26 years old. All 18 of his wins have been by finish, 12 knockouts, 6 submissions. He's definitely been kill or be killed in his 6 losses. He's been finished in 5 of them. But the way he kind of got into the UFC, had a knockout win on the road to the UFC. I think he was like a pretty huge underdog, like maybe plus 400, plus 500. He was a massive dog and just looked like the better guy. And then he knocked out Ozzy Diaz and Brenson Ribeiro in his first 2 UFC fights. I still think he's pretty raw as a fighter. Like even those fights he's winning, I think they're maybe closer to 50-50 than like we're actually seeing, because he's going to go out there, he's going to be reckless, he's going to throw big shots, but he's not the most defensively responsible guy. He was getting clipped a little bit in that Brenson Ribeiro fight. So I'm not viewing Zhang as like some sort of future champion world beater here. He's raw. He faced low-level competition outside the UFC. Like I said, he is hittable, and he's only gone into the second round 3 times in his career. So if this fight gets extended, there could be some cardio concerns that Anthony Smith could capitalize on being a veteran. But the man hits like an absolute tank. He's got power pretty much everywhere. His last 3 knockouts have been overhand right, left hook, short check elbow. So he does have like a decent mix of weapons at his disposal. And then Anthony Smith has just looked really rough over his last 7 fights. He's gone 2-5 in that stretch, but like those 2 wins, one was like the guillotine that like Petrino just ran into, where if Petrino just stood on the feet and picked at Anthony Smith, he would have won an easy decision or like found a finish. Instead, he's trying to wrestle someone whose like best shot is submitting you. And then like a very questionable, just bad performance against Ryan Spann where he got the decision win. He just honestly hasn't looked like he wants to be in there. He doesn't go for it on the feet. He's not going for broke. The durability is questionable at this point. He gets stuck in like these weird positions where he's on the ground and he's not making a ton of effort to get up and he's just eating a lot of damage, and it's just like kind of tough to watch. If I'm Anthony Smith, I think you have to acknowledge that like Minyang Zhang is extremely dangerous on the feet. You do not want to be standing with this guy. I would immediately be looking to grapple. I'm shooting a takedown right away. If you take him down, great. You can get your ground and pound, your submission offense going. And even if you don't land it, like you just push the pace in the area that's more of your realm. Zhang wants to stand on the feet. He doesn't want to be stuffing takedowns, getting held up against the clinch. I do think he just has to like go for broke for that takedown right away. Because I talked about how like Zhang is hittable. He can be knocked out. But Anthony Smith just hasn't fought with that juice in his last few fights, where it's not like he's going out there getting finished in like these 50-50 exchanges where if he lands, the other dude's going out. Like he's just not pushing it in that way. So if he wants to get the win here, I think you have to go to the grappling. I'm not super confident in that happening. I'm going Minyang Zhang, round 1 knockout. I think he keeps his streak going, and I think he makes it 12. And then the final matchup here, the main event, we have Ian Garry taking on Carlos Prates. Fight came together on short notice. Carlos Prates supposed to fight Jeff Neal at UFC 314. Neal pulls out. Ian Garry accepts the short notice opportunity because Khalil Roundtree, Jamal Hill got scratched, I believe, with a heel injury. So I've already actually posted a full breakdown, more in depth than I'm going to say right here on the channel. So if you want to check it out, it's the video right before this, but I'll still go over like my overview here. Both these guys, tall, rangy strikers. Prates, super successful so far in the UFC, 4-0, all knockouts. He's a southpaw, very loose, very explosive fighter. He's going to be aggressive, hits very hard, powerful knees to the body, good front kicks, inside low kicks against orthodox fighters. On the other side with Ian Garry, he is also primarily a striker. Say he's a little bit less explosive, a little bit less powerful, but I do think he's a little bit more calculated, more proven fight IQ, has the cleaner footwork. I also think he's like the better counter striker if I had to choose between the two. I think Prates' defense kind of deteriorates a little bit when he's moving backwards. I think he's much better when he's putting his opponent on the back foot, being able to really pressure them. I think the difference in this matchup is going to be Ian Garry's grappling. Now, I'm not saying he's some sort of like Sean Brady level grappler in this weight class, but we have seen real improvements over his last few fights and also just the willingness to go to it. He won the MVP fight by wrestling. He didn't have a huge ego and think I need to outstrike Michael Venom Page. No, he went in there. He wasn't having success on the feet. He banked 2 rounds with the grappling. Round 5 against Shavkat, stuffing a takedown, taking his back, nearly finding the rear naked choke. That is seriously impressive. And so I think he has the ability to clinch. And even if he's not getting takedowns, I think he can wear on the gas tank of Prates. Prates has held up well so far in terms of the takedown defense, but he's also been a little bit too susceptible to just getting clinched. And Ian Garry's not someone who's going to go out there and like try to put on a Michael Chandler level, like entertaining fight. If he can win by clinching Prates, just wearing him down, having a somewhat boring fight, he is fine doing that. We've seen Ian Garry go 5 rounds. He did it on short notice once before. I don't have concerns about his cardio. We don't know if Prates can go 5 at a decent pace. We don't know if Prates can go 3 if he's being clinched with Ian Garry trying to trip up his legs, take him down. So I think that's going to be the edge here. If this takes place entirely on the feet, I don't know if I love Ian Garry's chances, just because I think Prates has way more finishing upside. But I think Gary's going to mix in the grappling. I think he's going to rack up control time. I think he's going to be able to take him down. And I think he's going to take a lot of steam out of like the Prates explosion early on in this fight. So I'm going to pick Ian Garry by decision. But I'm super excited for this fight. I think both these guys are future contenders, both potential champions in this weight class. There's a nice new wave here at 170, and these two guys are definitely a part of it. So that is going to wrap it up for my full card predictions. Let me know your thoughts down below. If you enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe. Thank you all for stopping by, and I will see you in the next one.